I would say consider me a fellow music student, right? I'm not a music teacher. I'm just a musician who's been working, um, for years at this point. But there are things that I still need or want to improve upon. I at least believe that, studying more foundational concepts of music, even if they're not necessarily ones that I'm applying all the time, is going to help is going to help me compose and hear music better. So today, well, before I get into that, let me just kind of show you around. Reaper. So I have this session set up because I didn't want to waste time doing that while we're here. Big fan of the GGD Invasion kit. Obviously, huge amount of options. It's the Periphery Guys software, and it's super badass. So started off with just a drum groove. The main resource that I'm using for working on these modes is guitarscale.org, and they do provide backing tracks that you can work along with. They're super jazzy. They're not particularly my style, or I could, anybody could play over them, but I don't feel very connected to those. So I wanted to make one that would encourage me to check this out a little more. Cool. So here's just the basic drum groove that we'll be working with today. Just wanted to make sure that there's some motion in this rhythm. The jazzy one that Guitar Scales provides is really sparse. It's a really open composition with these big kind of spaces. I don't feel that too much. I gravitate towards faster music that's denser, not in the metaphorical sense, but just literally there's more happening quicker. I'm impatient. So the first thing I want to do is just hear, before we get into modes, is just to hear regular old C major. So I started some backing tracks just so we would have a context to hear the scales in. And then I'm going to restart because I do want to capture what I'm doing today, in the event that I need to remix or something dumb happens. Cool. So like I said, want to start with just hearing the C major in the context of C. That same site, Guitar Scales, provides a pretty good description of what the Dorian mode is. So the Dorian mode is a major mode. Today I'm going to be fooling around with D Dorian because it's related to C major by the fact that they share the exact same note values. What differs is that they have distinct roots, right? So the C major scale starts on C natural, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and a D Dorian scale is exactly the same notes, however you start on the second step. So in this case, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And the purpose of modes, let me read it. So guitarscale.org says, the D Dorian scale consists of 7 notes. These can be described as steps on the guitar fingerboard according to the following formula: whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. From the first note to the same in the next octave. The D Dorian is also a mode of the C major scale. It contains exactly the same notes, but starts on another note. and then some other information. So, like we said, exactly the same note names as a C major scale, but starting on the D. And the effect this has is to change the character, or the kind of tone, color of what this scale does. Everybody's pretty familiar with how a major scale sounds. That's not particularly new. Nope. Cool. So after hearing that regular, I can just shift these way over. Just going to put these aside, and I will sync them up later because it doesn't much matter. So these are just built to be pretty generic backing tracks. I can kind of drop that anywhere. So using that same C backing, I'm going to play a little bit of C major and then move it into D Dorian so we can really contrast the differences between the two scales and in the context of this C backing. Yep, gotta arm that. And kill the metronome, I don't really need that. But I did leave the count in. Cool. So like I said, to this backing of plain C, we're going to try C major and then moving it to D Dorian and see how that sounds and feels different. Non-diatonic pitch, unintentional. That's the D Dorian. That's the C major. And then D Dorian. Cool. So the D Dorian in that context, I would say still has a lot of that triumphant character of the major scale, or at least this relatively positive sounding. Because yeah, it is the same notes. However, in getting ready for this stream, I was fooling around with some other chords as harmony to that. And it can sound really dark and strange given a different context. So let me slide these over, and we're going to do the same kind of exercise. Cool. So we're going to do the same kind of exercise, actually just with a D minor 7 chord. So we'll see if that changes the character, and then we'll really change the character by putting it over an E minor 7 and F major 7 progression. Cool. So just to reiterate, this is going to be the one that is just the D minor 7 harmonic context. So D minor 7, that's all that's happening in the harmony. And we're going to do D Dorian over the D minor 7. So a little darker of a feel on that one. A little more, I don't know if pensive is the term, but I would say different from the context of the plain old C harmony. Then the purpose to, I feel like I was academically introduced to modes probably maybe not 9th or 10th grade. And they remained pretty abstract for a while because I was not far enough along to understand how to apply them. And it's really a recent understanding for me to be able to say, or to be able to literally like lay them over things and get, achieve these different kind of tone colors from them. So slowly changing. We remember the first, so D Dorian over regular C maintains the character of the major scale pretty well. I think it's still pretty triumphant. Over the D minor 7 gets a little more, gets a little darker, and then I have this harmony ready to go. That's E minor 7, F major 7, and these are related chords to the D Dorian mode according to my resource guitarscale.org. And this one really lends itself to getting much darker. Gonna just set the count into 0 because we don't need to do that every single time. Oh, it still does the count in. So that's E minor 7, F major 7. So I wanted to break there because I feel I'm not using this term in the way I think that George Russell does. George Russell is the Lydian chromatic concept of improvisation. I guess he's the inventor of that, or at least the identifier of this concept. So I'm not using this in the way that George Russell does, but I will say I feel a tonal gravity differently over this chord progression than I do over the C or the D minor. With the C, I don't feel a great need to constantly be coming back to the C. And in the D minor 7, I'm more comfortable kind of viewing D as the tonic reference. This one, though, I end up... that E, the E and the F, I'm drawn to that a lot more. Obviously, that's related to the fact that it is E minor 7 and F major 7 in the harmony. But that is an interesting way to preserve the structure of this scale and kind of point towards something different. The last one I have is, you'll recognize the first chord, definitely. And this one is a little less clear. I find this one is harder to, it's harder to find really melodic passages in this, because this is built from kind of random related chords. So it's a B5, flat 5, followed by D9, followed by C major 7. So these are all, right, these are all chords within this context. But yeah, like I said, it's way harder to find sort of things to do with it. So the really strange chord in this one is the B5 flat 5. You'll know it right away. 'Cause hurt chord by Nine Inch Nails. So this will be D Dorian over B5 flat 5, D9, and C major 7. So that one I'm clearly searching. And like I said at the beginning, consider me a fellow music student. This is stuff that I'm exploring and learning as well. So you can clearly see me in that passage searching for something to do. And yeah, so in the way that I felt this, again, not in George Russell's terminology, but there's a bit of tonal gravity when you're working over E minor 7, F major 7 in D Dorian, right? You have this E and this F that keep kind of drawing you in. And when you get a little less clear, so this B, D, C thing, and that's a relatively, right? That's 3 blind mice, 3, 2, 1. Well, not 1 in the context of C, but relatively simple pattern, right? And it's still pointing to something I can't quite put my finger on. And that's pretty much why I wanted to do these kind of streams and these kind of explorations, because some of these I find come really naturally, and others I need to really just try a bunch until I see like what is happening in there. And it may just be it may just be that D Dorian is not a marvelous choice for creating a compelling melody over something like B5 flat 5, D9, C major 7, and that's still something I gotta learn, right? And I think, like I said at the beginning, I think working on stuff like that is going to make me compose better music and hear music better. So I do think my favorite, though, is the E minor 7, F major 7. So I'm going to fool with that more. Yeah, I do want to spend more time on that because that's the one that to me sounds coolest. It's well, actually, here's an interesting idea. Let's treat E as the tonic and see if we can contrast a E minor pentatonic scale and the D Dorian. Those are relatively close to one another, right? If they're not literally next to one another, very close on the neck. And let's see what we can hear different between those. That was E minor pentatonic, now D Dorian. Cool. So I tried a few things there when in the D Dorian, and it was kind of trying to draw it back to D, and I feel like that didn't work as well as trying to draw it back to E and F.